Minute. Hi, how are you? This is Dr. Damaris Maria Grossman, and this is the Mindfully Integrative Show. And today we have a wonderful guest and mindful chat with Laura Lewis Barr. She is an award-winning, I'm going to say it wrong, but she's a filmmaker and an educator. But it's actually short films. They're stop motion films. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And I'm just so excited for her to be on the show because it's a different way of kind of talking about mindfulness and an integrative approach to our life. So thank you so much for being on the show. I know that you have a world of personal growth and things to talk about. So how are you today?
Super excited to be with you.
Thank you so much. So let's kind of get into it. I usually ask just a quick fun fact, something that people don't know about you.
Well, I think many people wouldn't know that my mother was in love with musical comedy, and she had me and my brother taking tap dancing lessons when we were children.
Oh my gosh. So are you like a dancer too? Like with all of
Oh, no, but it does. I took voice for years and my degrees in the theater. So I've just been sort of living this mythic, artistic story life much of my life. I had to do day jobs, but yeah, that world of story has been there forever. And musical comedy was sort of what I did as a kid.
And have you been doing the stop motion film and work for years?
So that's only been about 3 or 4 years. And when the pandemic hit, I went into it more full time because I was teaching storytelling to groups and couldn't do it anymore. So I just started really making these films.
That's really neat. I mean, it's taken off, right?
Yeah, well, it is my passion and it is an integration. So I was studying to be a psychologist. And then I had this theater. So it was always theater, psychology. And now they've come together.
They've come together. See, so
that's
there's your
what's so amazing.
I knew there was a story here. You had to talk to me about it because I mean, I'm in a yoga and nursing, and so let's talk about this. So what, you were a psychologist or you were studying psychology at one point?
Studying clinical psychology, and then drama won out, and I went and got my degrees in theater. And then many years later, I went back and started reading all of this Jungian psychology, and the Jungians are really into fairy tales. And so I was reading fairy tales and exploring them with groups. Sometimes I would be leading, and that there's a therapeutic, and then I started doing research. There's a whole therapeutic use of fairy tales out there. When I started doing stop motion, fairy tales became sort of the perfect short vehicle for these short 10-minute films.
So in a way, almost like a mindfulness like stories to get people in. That's
cool. Yeah, they're amazing. Fairy tales are amazing.
In a way, it's like a guided like store, a guided tour of something to get them into like another state of mind.
Right. A guided tour of your inner self.
That's amazing.
It is.
Tell me more.
Well, I mean, it's an art, right? So when we're involved in arts, there's a depth that you never reach, that I never reach. So as I work, so right now I'm finishing the Grail legend, and my modernization on the hunt for the Holy Grail, which is very related to fairy tales. It's like a fairy tale. And so I'm immersed in what is the Grail? What is it to seek it? What is my Grail? So these deep questions I live with for many months as I make these films. And then hopefully the viewer starts to live with those questions too.
Wow. So when you're kind of diving into these stories, do you find that they've kind of opened up even more for you or for your clients or people that watch them? Do people reach out to you and say, wow, I feel like this has been Or is there a certain fairy tale that's opened up certain things? Like, is there a psychology behind that? Like certain fairy tales open up a certain kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology. And if people were to Google fairy tales and psychology,
Mhm.
there's just a ton. The Jungians are always writing about this, and I'm not a Jungian
Uh-huh.
psychologist, but I have a passion for it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
voracious about it, and so continue to study. And there are Jungian groups around the country. So the Maine, as in the state of Maine, Maine Jung Center has a fairy tale group I've been involved with since the pandemic. I'm in Chicago, but I can be in Maine. And they had me do a program for them about my fairy tales, and they are really loving. So I'll be going out there again in September. So yeah, there are people who adore sort of this psychological exploration, and fairy tales and stop motion. They're just fun. They're just yummy combinations. They're silly. Yeah.
Wow. So tell me a little bit, like, what's your favorite fairy tale?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
I have to ask that now. I mean, you brought it up. I don't know. What's your, like, I mean, I think about, like, Little Red Riding Hood, and I think
Right.
about like Three Little Bears, and I don't know.
Right.
What are the fairy tales, or
Right.
Rapunzel? I know. What's that? What's the big
So
one?
yeah, I mean, all of those are juicy, and all of those can be excavated for a long time. Somewhat recently, I did one called The Three Languages. It's a grim tale.
Mhm.
And the hero, um, so often in these grim tales, the hero is the third son who's stupid, the dumbling, the one who nobody thinks has any intelligence at all, and they become the hero.
Mm.
Which I was coaching myself around that fairy tale this morning, because I'm not going to be on this podcast and I don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself a student.
Oh,
But
you mean
that
on this
fair,
podcast?
yes,
Oh no, this is
yes,
so. I'm a very open
yes,
individual when
no,
it
but
comes
it's
to
my
fairy tales.
stuff. But
Yeah,
that fairy tale comes to my mind because those fairy tales tell you that it's the part of us that doesn't know
exactly.
that often is the way through to the
Absolutely.
awareness, to the awakening. Mindfulness, yeah, it's a mindfulness principle, right?
It
Yeah.
is. Yep. It's an awareness of self. It's looking at the next level of your consciousness. And it's okay to not know
Yes.
when realizing you don't know a lot. Like, it's what I found getting a doctor, right? You're like, oh, you have a doctor. I have a doctor. It's great. Okay. But I found out in my expanding of my consciousness that I know nothing. Okay. All right. So what that means to me is that it's not about your educational things. It's where you are and what you're going to do, and what you're doing with yourself. So yeah, it's an awareness. I mean, when I think about your fairy tale conversation, I'm thinking of it like as messaging, right? When I do guided imagery for someone, I'm trying to
Ah,
message to them. So when I think
ah,
about a fairy tale, there's always that underlying, like, a lesson. This is what I'm getting from what you're. It's a lesson and a message. So these stories are messages. Like, you probably,
right.
when you're
And
filmmaking, you're probably trying to give a story, right? A story, but like a message in the end of some sort.
right, because these fairy tales have been around for centuries, sometimes millennia. And so they have taken human wisdom and congealed it into this structure that is why everybody loves them and everybody riffs off them. I riff off them.
Very cool.
So I want to finish that little tale, the three
Yeah, tell me.
languages. So the dumb guy, in my case, it's the daughter. The mother says, I want you to be educated. I'm going to send you to school. And she comes back. She learned the languages of the dogs. And the mother, like, what the heck? I'm sending you off to school again. She comes back. What did you learn? I learned the languages of the birds. The
Aw.
mother's like, you're driving me crazy. I'm sending you to boot camp. She comes back. She learned the language of the frogs. And then the frogs and the birds and the dogs eventually help her overcome and be the hero and marry the prince. And I love that tale
Oh,
about
that's so cool. Did you,
these instinctual languages that we need to learn.
and the birds. And it's probably doesn't seem like it's meaningful to someone, but there is a meaning.
Like a dream, there's a lot of meaning, and we can learn to get better at recognizing the meaning when we play with them, when we talk to people about them, when we journal them. Yeah.
Do you journal a lot?
Yeah, I do.
You do.
It is a great tool. Yeah. Bringing different parts together.
Well, that in itself is a mindful moment, mindful
Yeah.
aspect. And you probably
Yeah.
journal a lot to even get more content and work, right? To do more.
Right, right. To sort of bring through what's trying to come through from the unconscious. Yeah.
What has
Yeah.
been your favorite work that you've done in your stop motion?
Oh, it's usually the one I'm working on.
Oh, okay.
This one is about the hunt for the grail.
Yeah, the hunt for the girl. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
always really
it's really
hard.
interesting. That's very
Yeah,
spiritual though, too.
they're all
So, oh, they're
spiritual.
all very spiritual. Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
very interesting. I didn't so there's something I'm learning because I didn't see that in or from somebody on the outside not understanding the work.
Sure.
So for you, there's a spiritualness in this too when you're building these films.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because I
Can you
think
talk about that for me?
fairy tales, I think they speak to the part of us that is spiritual, psychological, spiritual. So when we don't understand a tale, I think a lot of times it's because, us moderns, we sort of go into this ego brain place and not the place that is of imagination or spirit.
Mhm.
So yeah, I definitely see them as cautionary tales about how to live our life well, and how to surrender to higher power. But I think they're open to interpretation. Other people might not
Interpretation,
see that.
right? So there is like a good and bad, but I guess it's trying to piece together what is the overall picture.
Right, right. Yeah,
That's really neat. So
yeah.
the Grail, Holy Grail. I mean, you're calling it the Holy Grail, or do you have another name for that? You have another name?
So Percival is the traditional name of the character, Percival and the Grail. And my title is Percy Grows Up, because I'm always trying to modernize these to make them applicable to today.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, this became an exploration of toxic masculinity. I stumbled over saying that because I don't want to get on the men. I mean, I have toxic masculinity in me too. It's just the certain part of us that isn't for life, that doesn't go toward life.
Are you
And
talking about
so,
more of just trying to like a growth ego, but in a way, just trying to like get through it, like do what you have to do, getting things done, or like an overpowering, kind of thing.
well, I think it's when the masculine in the world sort of um, is the sort of killing,
Oh, negativity.
war is like the extreme example of
Oh,
that, or the
gotcha.
way we're killing the planet, or sort of what I'm calling masculine versus feminine energies.
Okay.
But we have them both, and
Yeah, of course.
it's not about men, but it's
It's
about a
not
certain
necessarily that.
energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Energetically on a negative or a positive, like more.
Yes.
Okay, I see what you're saying. But I
Yeah.
think that it sways. I mean, that's where the balance comes in.
Yes.
And or also understanding. You're saying that you have that. We all probably have that type of mentality in some mass. It's just a matter of where we're lying it, right? Or what we want to do
Right.
with it.
Right. I mean, in some ways, it just exploring what Jung called the shadow part. What is not, what you're saying, growth oriented, or what is destructive. And there is a usefulness to destruction, but it has to be conscious, I think, or make it conscious. I don't know. I'm in some deep waters here.
Oh no, you're fine. Don't worry. You don't have to get too into it. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. So overall, did you want to tell me a little bit about um kind of where this, I know you said it from your stop motion film came like because of the pandemic, right? But what were you doing before that? What was it in your life that kind of you went from clinical psychology, you wanted to transition more into the arts because that was your thing, that was your passion. um Obviously you use, thoughtful thinking and trying to make messages in your work. What has changed, or what was before that stop motion that in your work that really felt like has changed or helped you?
Well, I always had sort of two tracks. I was always pursuing the theater. I was writing, directing, I taught.
Mhm.
Um, but then I went into corporate training to make money.
Of
And I
course, I
was,
mean everybody has to do something.
yes.
I mean depending, but you do both, you did both.
Well, I was really lucky because I started to use my creativity to do corporate training in emotional intelligence and storytelling. And
Oh,
it
I love
was,
emotional talents. I'm trying to write a storybook for children in it.
yeah, it's amazing stuff and relates to the theater in some ways because theater is about emotion. Um, so all of that was really good. Directing, writing, all that was good. But the filmmaking is kind of amazing because I can do it all on my own.
You can.
I can control it all.
Mhm.
I'm the master of this domain, and that's pretty cool. It's a little overwhelming, but very cool too. So it feels like it's been a evolution towards this, and it feels like it's becoming my career now,
I
and
think it's your
what I
career
just
for
want to
sure.
do.
It's another
Yeah,
path.
yeah,
People have two, three, four careers in their life.
exactly.
This
Yeah.
is this is your new career. This is you.
Yes, it is me. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I know that I find that it's almost like you're going through your own mindful path, getting, changing and transitioning, but you're finding you're bringing your message to others, and that's important. What would you like to share with the audience? A mindful tip, as I say, that has helped guide you.
Yeah, I think the big shift in my life in the last part of my life is to recognize that dreams or fantasy stories, fairy tales have a lot of wisdom. And if I can quiet down, if I can get mindful to allow those in, then I can shift into new places in myself. I can grow and transform. So the irrational, which in earlier days I would have thought was, not that important, I think is really important. That's the mindful tip.
That takes a really good point in the sense of you're saying irrationality, but really you're saying creativity, right? So that
Yeah.
creativity or that voice of something different doesn't mean that it was wrong. So when I just generally talk about mindfulness and we talk about the non-judgment and the good and the bad, when we were younger, we may have been taught that things are right or wrong. But when I've learned through the years, that quietness and this, time that you've had for yourself, you've been able to create this beautiful message to individuals in this film way that is not good or bad. You've seen this. It's another side of yourself, another part
Mhm.
and message that you are bringing to others. And if you hadn't tapped into it, you wouldn't be where you are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's beautiful. No, I thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything additionally you'd like to share with us? And then also, how can those reach you?
Fantastic. Well, my website is Laura, Laura, Lewis, Lewis, Barr, Barr, Laura Lewis Barr Films.com. That's a great way to just catch me on social media, all
Perfect.
my links. And yeah, I'm so happy to talk with you. This felt like a really nice combination of mindfulness and fairy tale.
Yeah, I love it. And so for me, I think my fairy tale, and like I said, I think I do the Three Little Bears, and I think that one's because I have toddlers, and it's always that going through the um I think of you when we're talking about this mindfulness, and I think about how it's just good enough, or the too hot, too cold, and the right in the middle. That's kind of where you lie. You're right in the middle where it's that good porridge, it's not too hot, not too cold.
Well
Think about
done.
that. You make me think about
Well
that.
done.
No, that's
Yeah.
what it makes you think about for you and for
Yeah.
me.
And that
Landed
that
on that.
skill of discerning what is the right for me is the lesson of that fairy tale. I love that.
So I want to thank you so much for being on the show and taking your time. And those watching, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
thanks again.
Thank you.
And as I tell each one of you, make sure you find a mindful way each and every day. Have a wonderful day or evening, whatever that is for you.